Yes.
Sean, I can't tell what I'm seeing on YouTube.
Okay. So I started a new live. I started over.
Yeah, I'm trying to get there from the front page and it's going to that old one.
Good morning, everybody. I hope you can hear me. I hope you can view this. We're getting a few things straightened out around here. Welcome to our Sunday morning worship service here at Eno River Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. I'm Reverend Deborah Cayer, and whomever you are, wherever you come from, whatever your race, your gender, whomever you love, wherever you are on your spiritual journey, we welcome you here this morning. I just want to go back and take a moment to say Juneteenth was last Friday, And the summer solstice, the longest day, it was yesterday, and this is a time when the light is shining brightly and so many important things are coming to light. Hallelujah. Today is Father's Day, and I want to wish a happy Father's Day to all of the terrific dads in our spiritual community. And y'all just stay tuned. At the end of this service, we offer a virtual coffee hour. There will be a slide that'll help you find out at the end of the service how to find that. So here are a few important things that we really want you to know about. First off, our very popular summer series, Odyssey, begins next Sunday morning at 9 o'clock, and you can find it through a link on the ERUUF homepage. Every summer Sunday morning at 9, a member of the fellowship will share their spiritual journey, and then everyone who's in the audience will have a chance to ask a few thoughtful questions afterward. And so, yeah, find the link right on the website. So that's at 9 o'clock. Next Sunday, very special, at 10 o'clock, all of us are going to the Unitarian Universalist General Assembly Sunday worship at 10 o'clock. What time? 10 o'clock. What time? We do that when we're together. Just, it helps people remember. 10 o'clock next Sunday. This is the only worship service we are going to have next Sunday. We're attending with thousands of our fellow UUs across the country. It's going to be awesome. So we're going to put that link on the ERUUF website so that you can attend, and you're going to help make this the largest Unitarian Universalist gathering in history. Then, wait, there's more next Sunday. At 1 o'clock next Sunday, we are having ERUUF's annual meeting. This is a time when members get a chance to vote on incoming officers for the fellowship, Board of Trustees for the fellowship, and the annual budget, and also other offices as well. So that is next Sunday at 1 o'clock. We need a quorum. We really need our members to come to that annual meeting. Again, that process, the registration process for members for the annual meeting is by email ahead of time, and you will be sent a link for that meeting. Everyone is welcome to view the meeting over on YouTube. That's a non-interactive platform, and so non-members can access the meeting there, and you won't have the option to vote as members will in the meeting. Okay. Today, Julia and the religious education folks are trying something new. They started last week, and they're going to go all summer. They are offering a children's chapel at 9:30 every Sunday morning, 9:30 to 10:15. And the children's message, the children's story, and other wonderful activities will be in that service. So if you and your children would like to attend, contact Julia, our religious education director, and she will send you the link to that children's chapel every Sunday morning. Reverend Stacy Grove and our worship associate Michael Field join me this morning, and our tech team behind the scenes is Sean Trimble and Michelle Sager. Kate Lewis is our musician, and we have other recorded music this morning as well. And so now let's take a breath and let's center ourselves, and we will continue with the prelude. This is a piece called Mary, Don't You Weep. It's a spiritual that predates the Civil War. It's a song that was sung by enslaved people as a code song, one of the most important code songs that was that enslaved people sang to each other to pass along messages of resilience and hope and encouragement. Mary, Don't You Weep.
Our opening words this morning are by the Reverend Dr. Kendall Gibbons. Out of a community of diverse heritage and belief, we came together to share our hope and to create good in the world. The prophets of all traditions and times have taught us that we are called to mercy, generosity, and mutual care, and that to be great is to serve. We know that there can be no enduring happiness for humanity so long as suffering and want go unrelieved. Until all may be sheltered, none of us is truly at home. May the power of our various faiths sustain us in this work, that we may be the hands of holy creativity and justice, and together build a better world.
We light our chalice this morning for the light of truth, the warmth of love, as a symbol of our burning desire for justice, equity, and compassion.
Our next hymn this morning was created by the Unitarian Universalist UU The Vote Project. They're singing a song called, what is this called? Let me find it. We Shall Be Known by the artist Mumuse.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle around to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive in this great turning. We shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle around to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive in this great turning. We shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love.
In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love. Yesterday, the Poor People's Campaign online was originally planned as a live march in Washington, inspired by the one planned for the summer of 1968 by Dr. King and other organizers, a great coalition of organizers at that time. That great effort was cut short by his death that year in April, and the great tumult of other other terrible events that year. But yesterday, 52 years later, on the solstice, a day of great light to shine great light on great problems in this nation, yesterday, organizers once again issued a moral call rooted in the inspired vision of the Hebrew prophets. They write, the organizers write, "Today we are living with unprecedented poverty in the midst of plenty, unnecessary abandonment in spite of unheard abundance. According to official data, at least 46.5 million people, including 1 in every 5 children, 20% of our children, are living in poverty. That's an increase of more than 9 million since 2008. And in addition to this, 97.3 million people are officially designated as low income. That's folks living on the edge. That's one medical emergency, one disruption away from hunger and homelessness and having your whole life go down like a house of cards. Taken together, this means that 48% of the United States population, nearly 1 out of every 2 people, is poor or low income. Think about that. So today, this movement seeks to redistribute power into the hands of the people. This movement, the Poor People's Campaign, they wanting to redistribute power into the hands of the people who are most affected by systemic racism and poverty, ecological devastation, an economy that is based on war, and a false narrative of religious nationalism. They want to redistribute power so that we can dismantle these structures of injustice and create something equitable and just for all of us. Organizers know that what's good for the least will also be good for everyone else too. So we're going to spend time with this morning, but now Michael Field is going to read parts of Dr. King's last sermon, Remaining Awake Through the Great Revolution, in which Dr. King laid bare the injustices of his time. Michael?
When Rip Van Winkle went up into the mountain, the sign on the local inn had the picture of King George III of England. When he came down 20 years later, the sign had a picture of George Washington, the first president of the United States. When Rip Van Winkle looked up at the picture of George Washington, and looking at the picture, he was amazed. He was completely lost. He knew not who that was. Yes, Rip had slept through a revolution. And one of the great liabilities of life is that all too many people find themselves living amid a great period of social change. And yet they fail to develop the new attitudes, the new mental responses that the new situation demands. They end up sleeping through a revolution. Now, whenever anything new comes into history, it brings with it new challenges and new opportunities. And I would like to deal with the challenges that we face today as a result of this triple revolution that is taking place in the world today. First, we are challenged to develop a world perspective. Through our scientific and technological genius, we have made a neighborhood, the world neighborhood. And yet we have not had the ethical commitment to make of it a brotherhood. But somehow, and in some way, we have got to do this. We must all learn to live together as brothers, or we will all perish together as fools. We are tied together in the single garment of destiny, caught in an inescapable network of mutuality. And whatever affects one of us directly affects all of us indirectly. For some strange reason, I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. And you can never be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be. This is the way God's universe is made, the way it is structured. Secondly, we are challenged to eradicate the last vestiges of racial injustice from our nation. I must say this morning that racial injustice is still the Black man's burden and the white man's shame. I can see nothing more urgent than for America to work passionately and unrelentingly to get rid of the disease of racism. In 1863, the Negro was told that he was free as a result of the Emancipation Proclamation. But he was not given any land to make that freedom meaningful. And the irony of it is that at the same time, the nation failed to do anything for the Black man. An act of Congress was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that this land was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. We must come to see that the roots of racism are very deep in our country. And there must be something positive and massive in order to get rid of all the effects of racism and the tragedies of racial injustice. There's another thing closely related to racism that I would like to mention as another challenge. We are challenged to rid our nation and the world of poverty. Like a monstrous octopus, poverty spreads its nagging, prehensile tentacles into hamlets and villages all over our world. There's nothing new about poverty. What is new is that now we have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty. The real question is, do we have the will? In a few weeks, some of us are coming to Washington to see if the will is still alive in this nation. We're coming to Washington in a poor people's campaign. Yes, we're going to bring the tired, the poor, the huddled masses. We're going to bring those who have known long years of hurt and neglect. We're going to bring those who have come to feel that life is a long and desolate corridor with no exit signs. We're going to bring children and adults and old people, people who have never seen a doctor or a dentist in their lives. We are not coming to engage in any histrionic gesture. We are not coming to tear up Washington. We are coming to demand that the government address itself to the problem of poverty. We are coming to ask America to be true to the huge promissory note that it signed years ago. And we are coming to engage in dramatic, nonviolent action, to call attention to the gulf between promise and fulfillment, to make the invisible visible. I submit that nothing will be done until the people of goodwill put their bodies and their souls into motion. And it will be the kind of soul force brought into being as a result of this confrontation that I believe will make the difference. Yes, it will be a poor people's campaign. This is the question facing America. Ultimately, a great nation is a compassionate nation. America has not met its obligations and its responsibilities to the poor. It's no longer a choice, my friends, between violence and nonviolence. It's a choice between nonviolence and non-existence. On some positions, cowardice asks the question, is it expedient? And then expedience comes along and asks the question, is it politic? Vanity asks the question, is it popular? Conscience asks the question, is it right? There comes a time when we must take the position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular. But a man must do it because conscience tells him he is right. Let me close by saying, we have difficult days ahead in the struggle for justice and peace. But I will not yield to a politic of despair. I am going to maintain hope as we come to Washington in this campaign. Yes, the cards are stacked against us. This time we will really confront a Goliath. God grant that we will be the David of truth, set out against the Goliath of injustice, the Goliath of neglect, the Goliath of refusing to deal with problems, and to go on with a determination to make America the truly great America that it is called to be. The words of Martin Luther King. Our hymn this morning is a contemporary movement song, Somebody's Hurting My Brother, written for us by ERUUF.
That we're about to learn is a song that's entitled Somebody's Hurting My Brother. Now, this song was actually born in a town hall meeting around coal ash. And the meeting came about because Duke Energy was spilling coal ash into poor Black and brown and poor white neighborhoods. After hearing testimony after testimony of people who were impacted physically and mentally by the coal ash, this song came as an inspiration of those testimonies. So I'll call to you, somebody's hurting my brother, and it's gone on, and your response is far too long. Yes, it's gone on.
Far too long.
It's gone on.
Far too long.
Somebody's hurting my brother, and it's gone on.
Far too long.
Now the end is, and we won't be silent anymore. We'll say that together.
And we won't be silent anymore.
Okay? And so we'll try the rehearsal version, which goes, oh, somebody's hurting my brother, and it's gone on
Far too long.
Yes, it's gone on
Far too long.
I tell you, it's gone on
Far too long.
oh, somebody's hurting my brother, and it's gone on
Far too long.
together, and we won't
Be silent anymore.
Now we're gonna put a little rhythm to this, okay? Okay, but we're gonna speed it up just a little bit. Not too fast. Oh, somebody's hurting my brother, and it's gone on.
Far too long.
Yes, it's gone on.
Far too long.
Tell you it's gone on.
Far too long.
Oh, somebody's hurting my brother, and it's gone on.
Far too long.
And we won't
Be silent anymore.
Yeah, somebody's hurting my sister, and it's gone on.
Far too long.
Yes, it's gone on.
Far too long.
Tell you it's gone on.
Far too long.
Somebody's hurting my sister, and it's gone on.
Far too long.
And we won't
Be silent anymore.
Did you hear? Somebody's poisoning the water, and it's gone on.
Far too long.
Yes, it's gone on.
Far too long.
Tell you it's gone on.
Far too long.
Somebody's poisoning the water, and it's gone on.
Far too long.
And we won't
Be silent anymore.
Have you heard? Somebody wants to build that wall, y'all, and it's gone on.
Far too long.
And we
Won't be silent anymore.
and we won't be silent anymore.
And we won't be silent anymore.
Just your voices start clapping, and we won't. And we
Won't be silent anymore.
last time all together. And we
Won't be silent
Oh my God, Ms. Yara Allen, thank you. Somebody's hurting our people, and we won't be silent anymore. Today in our country, 60 million working people earn less than a living wage. Retail and fast food workers often earn less than $10 an hour. Healthcare aides who spend the most time with the most vulnerable among us often earn as little as $10 an hour. They have no health insurance and no paid sick leave. They are mostly non-unionized, and these are the people who are currently working without employer-supplied PPE. That's right, their employers are not supplying them with PPE. I can tell you at the assisted living where my mom lives, the executive director a couple of months ago, when things were looking pretty bad, sent out a call to families, and my sister went on Facebook and found 40 face masks that she brought in to the staff of that assisted living facility. Families were supplying PPE for the staff. So if you wonder why COVID rates are so high in nursing homes and assisted living facilities, wonder no more. Because some lives are more valued than others. Those workers' lives were not valued. And some people's lives are considered disposable. Not understanding interconnection, it affected all the people in that system and all those people in those systems. Today, 70% of tipped workers in our country, your server at your favorite restaurant, might earn as little as $2.13 from their employer, and they have to make up the rest of their income in tips. 10 million people have lost their jobs in the recent pandemic, but in a recent survey, 65% of those surveyed who are tipped workers report that 65% of tipped workers report that they've been told that they don't qualify for unemployment benefits because they earn too little. As an organizer noted yesterday in the Poor People's Campaign online, this means that 6.5 million unemployed tipped workers, 6.5 million people, are being penalized for being too poor. Today, 25% of all Black people in America work in the hospitality industry. And for nearly 3 months, 98% of all hospitality workers have been laid off. This contributes significantly to the reality that the overall unemployment rate for Black people is 2 times the rate of white unemployment. So racism and poverty are distinct issues, and yet they are inextricably connected, interconnected. Organizers lift up this reality. The top 1% of our population own 43% of all wealth. The top 1% own 43% of all the wealth. The top 5% own 72%, and the bottom 80% are left with just 7% of the wealth. This means that 20% of the people in this nation own 93% of all the wealth. That is unconscionably lopsided. It means that 80% of our people are suffering, and we won't be silent anymore. Friends, this is a moral crisis. 140 million people in our country do not have the food, housing, and health care that they need. This is not a new problem. Dr. King recognized this as an outrageous moral crisis more than a half a century ago. Then he said, "We are called upon to help the discouraged beggars in life's marketplace. But one day we must come to see that an edifice which produces beggars needs restructuring. It means that questions must be raised." And you see, my friends, when you deal with this, you begin to ask the question, who owns the oil? You begin to ask the question, who owns the iron ore? You begin to ask the question, why is it that people have to pay water bills in a world that is 2/3 water? Today, organizers are calling for a living wage and guaranteed annual income. They have a moral platform of demands, and they need our help to get it in front of our legislators. It is not enough to feel outraged. It's important that we each do something. So you can find the Jubilee platform of the Contemporary Poor People's Campaign at june2020.org. And I believe Sean is going to drop that into the chat box for you too. june2020.org. And you can support this legislative effort by simply adding your name. just add your name to the petition. But when you're there, check out all the other ways that you can get involved in this movement. The prophets of our time are speaking, and we all need their bold moral vision that calls for the dismantling of systemic oppression.
Please join me for a time of meditation and prayer. May we listen deeply for what speaks truth in our hearts as I share these words inspired by Psalm 2. Christine Robinson writes, "Why are the nations in an uproar? Why do the peoples mutter and threaten? Why do the rich plot with the powerful? They are rebelling against the demands of love and justice. God laughs, cries, and says with anger, I have set my love in your hearts and my justice in your minds. You are my children, and I have given you the universe, your lives, and the tasks of your days. Be wise. Be warned. Stick to the paths of love and justice. Your restless hearts will find me there. Holy One of blessing, help us find the paths of love and justice that can best be found in the lives and experience of those who have been unloved and treated most unjustly. Help us stay on the paths of righteousness for the greater good of humanity, of the world. Help us start with the well-being of just one person who's in need of a living wage, health care, education, decent housing, clean air, water, and soil. Help us create new ways to ensure that these are the basic minimums for everyone, for all. Holy One of blessing, set your love and justice within our minds and hearts this day and evermore. This morning in our beloved community, we celebrate the milestone birthday of Dawn Hartman, who is 90 years old today. We celebrate all our fathers who are being specially honored this day. We hold in our hearts all who are suffering the loss of loved ones, all who seek healing, all who are experiencing illness and navigating the medical systems, all who have loved ones with COVID-19. Christy Mather is still recovering from being hit by a car. Susan Heyman, Chrissy Trainello, Gino Barr, and Carolyn Lekovich are still continuing in their recovery from surgery. For those named and those held privately in our hearts, we ask for healing and for wholeness. May the love of this community flow forth as care, as connection, and inclusion. May we hold each other with compassion, with care, and with grace. Amen. Ashe. May it be so. Our special music now is Lift Every Voice and Sing.
Systemic injustice means that racism and poverty are intertwined with the ecological crisis that we're in. In a world of abundant resources, some people have claimed exclusive rights to essentials, restricting them for high fees. And so today, 1/3 of all people in this country cannot afford water. Not just in Flint, where the water mains are ruined due to criminal indifference on the part of officials, but also in places like Kansas and Iowa, where industrial agriculture has polluted the groundwater. In Virginia and North Carolina, where the coal ash from electric companies has been polluting groundwater for decades. In some places, people cannot drink the water that they bathe in. And in some places, the water coming out of the taps is too toxic to even wash with. Human beings are 2/3 water, just like our planet. So why is water, which is so essential, not a protected natural resource and freely available to every living being on Earth? We need to develop a new economy based on clean energy and green production, shared resources for sure. Behind each of these statistics is massive human suffering and oppression, and poor people are organizing and fighting for their lives, literally. Today in our country, 700 people a day die from the effects of poverty, racism, pollution, a war economy. 250,000 people die every year from causes that come out of being poor. So poverty is like a knee on the necks of the poor. Poor people are fighting for their human rights and their deepest values as well as their lives. And they're joining with others who are struggling where they live. Indigenous communities have been targeted almost from the first arrival of European people on this continent. Currently, unemployment rate on many Native reservations is at 70%. Today, organizers write, Dr. King understood, as we must, that you cannot fight poverty without fighting the social ills that cause or deepen it. That the same social ills that threaten and damage the security and well-being of people everywhere. These same things affect all of us. You cannot end poverty without ending racial, gender, and class inequalities. These problems are massive, they are systemic, they are overwhelming. Even so, there is great hope and great determination among organizers who for decades have been reaching out to each other, sharing stories, sharing strategies, sharing love, sharing practical support. This has not escaped the notice of people with power, which is why they are working so hard to suppress voting rights and dismantle programs like food stamps and Medicare and other parts of the social safety net. Why they've suspended EPA regulations and why they were unprepared for a pandemic. They dismantled that office. $700 people die every day from the effects of systemic poverty. That's 250,000 people every year. And the illnesses they endure sometimes throughout their whole lives also negatively impacts the people who love them. And they cannot just move, and they cannot just get a better job. They cannot pull themselves up by their bootstraps because they lost their boots in the quicksand and the floodplains, all the marginal places they've been pushed to and forced to live. Today, organizers of the Poor People's Campaign are joining together with grassroots leaders of hundreds of diverse communities and movements. As we deal with COVID-19 and begin to look for recovery and renewal, none of them are interested in going back to normal when normal is ongoing hunger and homelessness and wage suppression and lack of workplace protection, environmental poisoning, and the theft of their vote. Instead, they're interested in fairness, in having their labor fairly compensated, in having safety equipment and paid sick leave, access to affordable health care and transportation. They want clean air and water. They want decent schools for their children. In other words, they just want the basics that are promised to everyone. They just want a fair chance. All of this could be achieved if we organized our economy around the understanding of our inescapable interdependence. As Dr. King told us, we are tied together in a single garment of destiny, caught up in an inescapable network of mutuality. And whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. This is the way the universe is made. This is the way it is structured. This is reality. We can organize ourselves in accord of the reality of our physical and spiritual interdependence. Or we can continue to go against nature and natural systems and all that is holy with the same degenerative results, illness and devastation for the most vulnerable, and rippling out from that effects on all of us, because as we've seen with groundwater pollution, as we've seen with the pandemic, there is no such thing as over there. There is no such thing as a hole in your side of the boat. It's our boat. And if there's a hole in it, it's everyone's problem. We all have to care about it. We all have to figure out a way to solve it. And so we stay at home and we wear masks in public, yes, to protect ourselves, but even more, we're doing this to protect the people who have to be out in public to do their jobs all day, all night. Many of them without a living wage, many of them without a functional safety net to begin with or to land in. We do this ultimately because we are all in this together. And what affects the most of us, what affects the most vulnerable among us, actually truly affects each and every one of us. Somebody's hurting our people, and it has gone on far too long, far too long. And we won't be silent. We won't be complicit. We will not turn away from this back to our comfort and our ease. We will not tolerate it anymore. You can watch a recording of yesterday's live stream, and you can go to june2020.org and find out how to get involved. You can also check out ERUUF's Facebook group to connect with some of the people in this congregation who have been steadily active with the Poor People's Campaign for years. You can connect with our justice folks who are working with organizations like Durham Can and the Immigration Group. They're all getting a hold of a little piece of this interconnected mess and doing their part, working together to try and create change, sometimes very effectively. It's inspiring. Get involved. Join in. I want to close this morning with the words of Langston Hughes, an American poet who was not known to be an optimist, but he was someone who rigorously lifted up the ugly truth about life in America. And yet, like the organizers of the Poor People's Campaign, Hughes had a vision of what's possible. Hughes had great love for humanity in his heart. He said, wandering in the dusk, sometimes you get lost in the dusk, and sometimes not. Beating your fists against the wall, you break your bones against the wall, but sometimes not. Walls have been known to fall. Dusk turns to dawn, and chains be gone. May we stay determined to dismantle the links of the chains that have bound all of us for far too long, especially the most vulnerable among us. Let's go, friends. Let's lean in. Ashe. Amen. Blessed be. In this time, ERUUF is doing ministry mostly all online, and we're going to stay online for quite a long time, we think. And so we thank you for your love, your care, and your support for each other and for this ministry that we share. At this time, it's the time for our offering, and you could go to our website and make a donation. ERUUF is grateful for your support. And we are here to support others as well. If you need support, please contact one of the ministers. This is not charity. We are all in this together, our own mutual aid society. The offertory this morning is by the great composer and pianist and jazz artist Nina Simone. Nina was a native of North Carolina. She was awake to social injustice from the time when she was a child, and she never stopped her whole life. She was an incredible musician. This is her song, Mississippi Goddamn. Oh my goodness. That was Kate Lewis's inspired honoring of the great artist Nina Simone. And so we come to the end of our service. And the closing words today are from the great poet Maya Angelou. She said, "History, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived, but if faced with courage, need not be lived again. Lift up your eyes upon the day breaking for you. Give birth again to the dream." Friends, go with love, go with courage to face the past, dismantle present horrors, and co-create the future with others who are also committed to justice, equity, and compassion. Go do this work. Blessed be. Ashe. Let's go.